Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on the this Yevamot stop Pei Tes. We are going to begin on the bottom of Pei Ches Amud Beis by the two dots. Sricha get mizeh mizeh. So this is based on the Mishnah in our new parak, which discusses a situation where a man traveled abroad to Medina Siyam, and then someone came back and said that Meis Balech, your husband died. So she ended up getting remarried, and we're discussing how many witnesses said this and how many said the other. Is it Trey or Trey? Anyway, she ended up getting married, as the Mishnah says, and then her husband comes. So it says, B'fer shner Mishnah, teitz mizeh mizeh. She has to leave both relationships, usricha get mizeh umizeh, and she needs a get from both of them. So in this, the Gemara says, Bishlam Marishon tiboy get. I can understand from the first husband you need to give a get because she's married to him, because he wasn't dead. El misheni amai znus bi almahu. Why does the second man have to give her a get? They're not married because she was always just married to one man. A woman can't be married to two men. So Amarav Huna Gezer Shema Yamru Girish Zeh Benasa Zeh. V'nimsas Eishes Ish Yotzabulo get. We're concerned of what people may say. They may end up saying that, you know what, this person did divorce her and she was rightfully married to the second guy, and all of a sudden we find that she's engaged in Eishes Ish Bulo get. So because of that, we want to make sure that because of any potential rumors that they have to receive, she needs to receive a get from both men. Yahachi Seifa de Katani Amrullah. If they said to her, Meis Balech, your husband died, V'niskadsha, she got engaged, B'yachar kach bo bal, and all of a sudden her husband came, Muteres lach solo. In that situation, we said that she's allowed to go back to her first husband. Now, Hasam Nami name a girish zeh, v'kiddush zeh. Why don't we say the same chashash? Maybe she was divorced, and now afterwards she was mekadesh after she was divorced by her first husband. Nimsas eishes ish yotzablu shlo beget. How do we allow her to go back to her original husband? After all, there was kedushin. So olam boy get. The truth is, you're right. In that situation, a get is also required. Yihachi nimsazem machsagur shaso. So the question is, how is this allowed? There's an isser machsagur shaso, namely, if a woman gets married, divorced, she can remarry her original husband, provided that she wasn't married to anyone in the middle. The answer is mission is arsa. Krav Yosi ben Kiefer, Diamar min hanasuan asura, min erusin muteres. Very interesting chiddush. Now, when it comes to the din of machsagur shaso, the only time she cannot go back to her original husband is if in between she was fully married. But if only kedushin was done, but that was it, then it's not an isser of machsagur shaso. Says the Gemara, Havanitani Seifa. It says in the Seifa, Afal P, focusing on the words, even though, as we continue to pay Testament Aleph, Shinasan la Acharain get, even though the last one gave a get, will pasla min a kahuna. That will not passel her from kahuna. Says Rashi, this Shinasan la Acharon get, the second one gave, she arsa, the one who was engaged to, so she gave a get. In that case, she will not be pasel. What do we deduce? L'chlad lo boy get. Di boy get, amai lo pasel min a kahuna. If in fact, a get is required, then of course she should be pasel from kahuna. If he had to give her a get, it's a din of a kohen marrying a gerusha. So if it's an absolute requirement, then l'chayra she should be pasel to kahuna. So why do we say she's not pasel to kahuna? It must be because you don't need to give a get. El seifa amri kiddushi toisabi. So we're talking over there in the seifa. There was a mistake. The whole kedushin, says Rashi, Gabi kedushin vadik ka'amrit. The little boy get. You're right. It doesn't need to get. The kashaloch, says Rashi, shema yomer girish zev kiddush zeh lo asel memer hachi el amri midenafka below get. The fact that she left without a get must be if kedushi to'isabi. It was a mistake. You're going amnashani kain v'nimsi Yisrael. So as it discusses in the third parak in kedushin, marry me on al tanai that I'm a kohen, but I'm not a kohen. So it's kedushi tos. So it's not a kedushin. So therefore, you don't need a get. So Reisha Nami Armi Nisui Tois Havi. Why don't you say the same thing when it's Nisuin? What's the Nam of Erison and Nisuin? So Kansura Banan, when it comes to the situation where she actually went full through the Nisuin, so we're going to Kanaser. And we're not going to be lenient. So Seifa Nami Lik Nusua. So L'chari we should also Kanaser in the Seifa. Now Reisha of the Isura, in the Reisha, since she actually did an Isser of having Bia, so they're Kansua. Seifa, where there's no Bia because it was only Kedushin, the of the Isur will Kansura Banan. So in that case, we're not, the Rabban will not Kanas. Question 9. So Amrulo, Meis Balech, your husband died, Miskadsha, and all she did was Kedushin. So he said, in fact, you're right, you do not need a get, because in fact you need a get, then how is it shaykh to say she's not possible from kahuna? It must be the fact that she's still not possible to kahuna. Obviously she's not like a din of a garusha. A garusha cannot marry a kohen. It must be therefore a get's not necessary because the whole thing was a kedushi tais. And then the Mishnah says, Ein lo ksuba, that she's not entitled to a ksuba. Now, why not? My time, the whole reason for a ksuba is for a man to remain in this relationship. And because of the financial difficulty of having to divorce her and have to pay all this money, a person who may be a little hot-headed may wait a little bit before he wishes to divorce. So let this be a case where she's kal be'ena b'hoitzia, because again, this is a situation where she's not supposed to be married to this man. So therefore, no ksuba is given, and therefore, for that reason, also ein lo peros vo mazonos vo blois, because tonight ksuba nami. These are all things which are connected to the ksuba, like the conditions that are linked to the ksuba, and therefore, for that reason, the Rabbanan kanas, and therefore we say that we don't give her ksuba or any of these other things. Not lemizeh. Now taka, she grabs it. Let's say she ends up grabbing and taking the ksuba and the tanai ksuba. She has to give it back. No pshita. Obviously, it's not hers. No matter temaki van de tafsa lo mafkinami no kamashmon. Maybe in a situation where she's holding on to it, she grabbed onto it, we're going to take it away from her. Kamashmon, we will. Havlad mamzer. So let's go back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says that in this situation, the vlad is a mamzer. If she has a child from either husband, the child's a mamzer. Now the Gemara has difficulty with this and says like this: Tanan hasam, ein tarmin min hatame al hatahar. We know when it comes to the din of truma, because it's a financial loss to the kohen, you're not allowed to separate tame to tahar, because we know something which is tame has less value. V'im taram, but let's say you did it, b'shaygeg truma sa truma. It was done b'shaygeg, as we'll see later on, based on the words of Rabbi Eloi, it's actually a good separation. But maybe also a little cool. But if you did it on purpose, then it doesn't work. So the question is, based on the din of truma, one who is tarim tamei al tahar, what does it mean loss of l'kum? Which really means nothing. But actually it's going to be a machlokas. Rav Chisda, loss of l'klum kol ikr. According to him, it's nothing at all. And therefore, they feel that he griva, even the griva, says Rashi, even the truma itself that you separated, hard lativle, goes back. It's like you did nothing. Rav Nas and Rabbi Oisha says not exactly. Oimer says loss of l'klum sakin as a shirayim. You didn't do enough to be able to fix that which is the leftovers. Says Rashi as a tahar shezeh haya oisa shirayim of a truma havi. We say it actually is a good truma, and says Rashi v'kidsha v'yachsav yitrim in a tahar. So the din is that you actually have to do another separation, another truma, but this time you actually have to take it from the tahar, not from the tameh. Now Rav Chisda omer Rav Nasan Rav Oisha. He didn't like this svara that it actually works. Because if you actually want to say, okay, yeah, technically it's good, you can't eat the food, but at least the truma is a truma, but you have to do it again. So zimna de pasha, in this situation, if we tell people that actually on some level it works, you may be negligent, full mafresh, and you're not going to separate it. And therefore, our goal is not to reward this guy for doing the wrong thing. And therefore, we're going to say that it's necessary for him to do the entire truma. And it was nothing. That even, it's still like tevel. None of it is good. So therefore, because of that, a person will be more likely to end up separating it properly. So the question is, my shna mohadit nan. How is it different from what we learned? Hatayrim kishus benimsis mora. Let's say a person was separating cucumbers, and it turned out that they were bitter. And again, the person did this b'shogeg. Originally, he didn't know that they were inferior vegetables. Or avtiach v'nimsis saruach. You're separating gourds, and they turned out to be spoiled. Truma v'yachs v'yitroim. So in that situation, we say it is a truma v'yachs v'yitroim. The question is, why would we say this, l'chayra, based on the shita of Rav Chisda? He says it's nothing. So why don't we say the same thing over there? And the Gemara says, shaygeg amazed karamis. How can you compare the case of a shaygeg to a case of b'mezid? In the case over here, b'shaygeg, mamash didn't know that it was spoiled or bitter. Shaygeg avedi surah, did nothing wrong. Mezid kavedi surah. B'mezid you did an isser. And this actually, it's helpful to see Taisus. Taisus says as follows: L'kach shabu rabbanan ki'ilu tarm klal. If it's b'mezid, this is the reason why Rav Chisda says it's like he did nothing. V'hadarahu garvia l'tivla, and it goes back to the original status. Diamrit trumahu, says Taisus, if you want to say it's truma, asi l'misha, then a person will be negligent. Dahat shavi nafshi rasha. Shoygeg, because he's already made himself into a rasha. So in this situation, if we say he's established as a rasha, he does things b'mezid. So it's very interesting svar. It's a b'mezid. So if you already say, it's kind of like it works, but you have to do it again, he's not going to do it again. The guy doesn't care. Shoygeg will obedi surah medas. He didn't want to do it mistakenly, incorrectly. Hilkach lo choshid dilma pasha. Beautiful shot, says Taisus. So when it comes to b'shoygeg, a person really is a good person, wants to do the right thing. So when it comes to the din of b'shogeg, we'll tell him truma v'yachs v'yitrum, do it again, and we know he will. However, if we already established the guy as a b'mezid, so then he's not going to do it again. Fine, and therefore, because of that, if we say tarim v'yachs v'yitrum, he won't do it. If instead we say he did nothing, maybe at least he'll do it in that situation. So Rabbi shegeg. So in that case, we should actually compare sheg to shegeg in order for it to be a valid question. Over here, we said that it is a truma. Hasim katani truma v'yachsav yitrom. But yet over there it says you have to redo it. Now hasim shegeg karblamezid iboile limit ameh. When it came to this case, the reason why, not that it's just a good truma, so why do you have to do it again? It was b'shogeg. It's because even though he didn't do it on purpose, he was a little bit negligent because he at least should have tasted it to have been able to have sensed that there was something wrong. So he did something wrong enough that we require him to separate it again. When it comes to the dinim of the case of the Toma, that's like he did nothing. Bahasam Tanan, Atarim Mishain Nokuv al Nokuv. Truma v'yachsav yitron. If you have a perforated pot in which, because it has a hole, it receives nutrients from the ground, so that has a chiv, a truma, not on the same level, on more of a level than a she'eno nukav, one which does not have a perforation. So, but over there it says truma v'yachsav yitron. Now, a person did this b'mezid, and nonetheless we say, you know what, you can do it again. But when it came to the other situation, we said it's like he did nothing. So why in one case would we actually say, even though he was b'mezid, that it was good, but we're going to believe that he's going to do it again? Maybe he won't. Your answer is, betray money tzayas, b'chad mana l'tzayas. If we're dealing with two kalim, like the case of a perforated pot and an unperforated pot, so he'll listen to you. You can actually say that there's a problem, and he'll be able to say, yeah, maybe it's a problem. However, only one kli, if we're only dealing with one thing, he's not going to listen to you. He's going to say, this makes no sense. How could it not be good? So if it's good, it's good, and he's not going to do it again. Now, according to again, the svara of person who separates tameh al tahar, that it's considered like it's nothing. What did he mean by that? Not that it's nothing, but rather l'sak and shirayim. It just means that you can't eat this anymore. It still has the status of tevel. Avul trumahavi, according to him, actually separating it actually is good on some level. This, even though it was, you took that which was tahar for tameh, etc. Nonetheless, it's still good as we continue Talmud Beis. Ma'ishna mahaditnan. How does he understand? There's a huge difference from what we learned before. It says min hanokov al she'enu nokov trumas truma. If a person separated from nokov al she'enu nokov, it's a good truma. But then it says v'lo te'achel. You're not allowed to eat it ad sheyotzi leha truma meiser mamakam acher, until you take off truma and meiser from another place. Says Rashi, ma'ishna mahaditnan lo si achel kayin. Why does it say that it cannot be fed to a kohen? Ad sheyitin al sa zu truma meiser makam acher. The machsakinan la betevel gomer. When it says don't eat it, it means the kohen's allowed to eat it. But achayra, you just said that a kohen is allowed to eat. You just have to separate it. The rest, the shrine isn't good, but the truma itself is good enough for the kohen to eat. So how come over here it says lo siachel? No shani hacha the midiraisa truma mal yasihi. That minha taira, this is really good truma. And you separate tar and tameh, even though one is inferior, it's still technically good. How do we know that? From the famous words that we quote many times throughout Shas. Rabbi Eloi, Yom Rabbi Eloi, Menayin lo tarim in a ral yafish truma. I don't know if you are tarim bad on good, that it's still good, that it works. Dechsev, based on the lashon of the pasuk, v'sisel of chait, that it should not be a sin placed upon you. B'harimchem es chelboy, when you're engaged in this truma of separating good from bad. So mimeno now v'imein kadosh nasis ched lama. If in fact you didn't, if it doesn't work, if it's ineffective and it does nothing, so then where's your sin? You didn't accomplish anything. Must be makam tar mineral yafish truma. Must be that. Why is it a chet? Because you did something. You did something you shouldn't have done, but at least it's effective. So min ha-Torah, the reason why the kohen is allowed to eat this truma is because midiraisa, it's a truma somal yasa. It's good truma. Midirabbanan, we say we don't want you to do this. We don't want you to separate ra. We don't want you to separate ra al hayafa. But technically, if you do, it'll work. It'll still be chal. Amalei Rabbi Rav Chisda. With the dach, according to you, the amrid loss lo klum kalikar, that's worthless. Tiafilahu gariva, as you said, hadar latevel so my taima. Why are you so strict? Now, again, you have l'chayr, this pasuk which establishes that it's a valid truma. So if it's a valid truma, so why do you say that it goes back to tevel? It's not true. Right, says you're right. Midiraisa, maybe it's a truma, but gezerah dilma pasha. As we said, the problem is that if we say that it's a good truma, and we're talking about a guy who's doing this b'mezid, he'll be negligent. V'lo mafresh, he won't redo the hafrasha if it was effective the first time. So the Gemara asks, okay, but it's a problem. It really is good, but we pretend as though it's not good. Mi'ika midin midiraisa havi truma. That's really good when we should. Dilma pasha afkura ban lochulan, but then we pretend that it's not good. How can the Basin come and uproot something from the Torah? The Torah, it says it's a good truma. So all of a sudden, according to you, they say it's not a good truma. How could they do that? You tell me that you don't agree to that? You don't think that could happen? That there can be a Torah law, but the Rabbanan could uproot it and change it. Its status. Doesn't mean they can uproot, you don't have to keep Shabbos. It means you can uproot a halacha. This is truma. We say, you know what? We don't want it to be considered halachically as a valid truma for various reasons, as he says the reason. And we know that this case is true. How do we know this? Based on our Mishnah. V'tanan havlad mamzer mizeh mizeh. Now, what happened? Again, her husband went to Medina Sayyam, and all of a sudden someone says, oh yeah, your husband's dead. So she got remarried, and she has kids from both husbands. Her first husband comes along and says, "Hi, I'm not dead." So it says that they have to give a get. There's no ksuba, and then it says if they had children, they're mamzerim. Now, Bishlam Misheni Mamzer, the second one makes sense. She was still married to the first guy, so the children that she had was Ashes Ish. I mean, she didn't mean it to be that way, but that's a reality. El Marishanamai, Ishtohi, Visrael Malyahu, the Kasharin and Lema Mamzeres. How is it possible that we could possibly say that this kid is a mamzer, right? It's from her first husband. She is married to this first husband. This is a good yid. The Torah would say that this is a perfectly fine child. But nonetheless, the Rabbanan will say, I'm going to be Akar Davar Min Torah, and I'm going to even allow him to marry Mamzeres, because the Yisrael can't marry Mamzeres. So what we're going to do is we're going to even matter him to marry Mamzeres through the Rabbanan. So we see that's the same thing by Truma. Even though it's a good Truma, the Rabbanan say it's not a Truma. This child is a Yisrael, I'm going to say that he's mutar b'mamzeres. Amalei hachi yamar Shmuel asur b'mamzeres. L'chein ki asur Rabbanan Rabbi Yochanan asur b'mamzeres. The reality is that we're not going to use this as a kula to say that his status changed. He really is a Yisrael. However, we're going to establish him halachically on some level of a mamzer that he can't enter Kahal Hashem, but he has additional problem because in Midoraisa, he really is a Yisrael. We're going to say he's not allowed to be with the mamzeres. So the Chachamim are not being Akar Davar Min Torah. They're just being more strict. They're not saying, "Oh, he's a mamzer, so he can marry a mamzeres," when really Midoraisa he's not. But my karli mamzer. So then why would we call him a mamzer? Well, Oisur B'Bas Yisrael. So Nebuch, this poor guy, is actually going to be also to marry a mamzeres, and also to marry a bas Yisrael. Says Rashi, "With konsub almahu l'hachmer v'laso siel g'Torah v'enzu akira." This is not ripping it. El aval hakel al divrei Torah akirahi. Okay. Shalach le Rav Chisda l'Rabba biyad Rav Acha b'Rav Huna vein beis mas l'achim b'davar b'Torah. You tell me that this doesn't work. So by Truma, apparently we're saying it's true, but maybe our Mishnah is not a raya. But v'sani me'amasai adam yorish es ishto katana. The Gemara asks the question, at what point is a person able to inherit his wife who is a minor? Says Rashi, Imesa, if she died. V'lo amrinan shema atida haisa l'ma'in. V'ishtakach dalav ishtahavi. U'v'yisayma askinan. So, we're not talking about a situation where the father married her off, as beating the statisha zad, it said kedusha deraisa. It's where she was a yisayma. She didn't have a father, and therefore it was a kedusha de-rabbanon. And during the time she's a katana, she always has the ability to do miyun. She could leave the marriage. Now she died. Now it was possible she could have done miyun, but she died before that was a possibility. So in this situation, it's still possible that the husband could be yarish her. So, but when is that going to take place? So it's machlokas. Beishamai armim mishata'amoid b'koim masa, when she stands up in her height. What does that mean? It says Rashi kishtagi lapirka b'shanim, when she reaches her age. Avas seir, also she shows signs of physical maturity. Beisil armim mishatichanes l'chuppah, when she enters to chuppah. So in Rebbe Lezer Omer Mishati Ba'il, when he actually has already had tashmish with her. So before this, so she is not considered to be his wife. And therefore, if he had bia with her, then V'yorsha, he inherits her. Umatamala, if he's a kohen, he can become tummy for her, because it's considered to be She'eros, his wife. V'yechelas beginai truma, and she can literally eat in the garden truma, because they're considered to be married. Beishamai oimrim, so let's just qualify this a little bit more. Beishamai said, Mishata'amoid b'kamoso, when she reaches an age. So as long as she's reached age of physical maturity, so you're telling me that you're yarish even if she doesn't go to the chuppah. Says Rashi, Carmelon, we learned way back in Daf Chav Tes, Afil b'gedoy la'ishto arusa lo oinen v'matame la mesa in yarsha. That even if we're talking about you marry a 20-year-old woman, the reality is at the time of Erison, There's no Yerusha. A kohen cannot be matama for an b'shas erison. It's only once she entered into chuppah. So kal v'chaim or v'kol shekin when it comes to this girl. So ema misheta'amoid b'kamasa b'dichanas chuppah. V'hachi k'amru le be'shama beis hillel. Dikamrisu mishetichnach esol chuppah. You Beis Hillel say that all you need is chuppah and you do not need her to be a gedola. I amda b'kamasa mahanya. That's only if she's reached signs of maturity, says Beis Shammai. So that's the machlokas. Certainly you need chuppah, just like a gedola. However, the machlokas is, can a man be yorish her even while she's still a katana, hasn't shown signs of physical maturity? Rabbi Lezer oimer mishiti boil. At the moment when they have had bia, Aviyam Rabbi Lezer ein masik katana klum. This bia shouldn't help. So ema mishetigdil v'tiboil. It's not enough to have bia, but she also again has to show signs of physical maturity and have bia. Katani miyas, nonetheless, what do we learn? Yarsha. We find that he inherits her. Now b'hahacha the midiraisa v'u yarsla. Midiraisa, it's the father who inherits. Again, the father's not around, but his heirs should be the one that inherits this girl. Says Rashi, Koimer Kroive ha'av. Yarti la de nisui katana min rabbanan inhu. This is only kedusha de rabbanan. Mishum duliyin haguba minag hefker. Avatarul zichsel v'kadosh abbas lo ima v'lacheha. We want her to get married, but the reality is, it's really not a kedusha deraisa. So since it's not a kedusha deraisa, if this girl dies, it should all the monies should go to her father's yorshim. Uminurabanan Yoris Labal, but nonetheless, for some reason we said the husband is Yorish. Why? Because the Chachamim could be Oiker Davar Min HaTorah. Murray says that's true, but it's not really a raya because it's money. And we say Hefker based and Hoya Hefker. There's a din of Hefker based and Hefker. Yom Rabbi Yitzchak Manayin Hefker based and Hoya Hefker. Shnemar. Pasuk says Kolash Shelo Yavo L'Shaloshes HaYomim. Anyone doesn't go in these 3 days, Ma'atzas Asarim, Vazikenim Yecharam. And they don't come. All their things will be taken away. Korachushay, all of their wealth, will be taken away. V'liyibadil mikahal hagoyla. Abelazar memahacha el hanachalais asher nichalu elazar hakoyin v'yashu ben-nun. So these are the different things that they inherited. Roshia avos lamatas b'nei Yisrael v'chima inyan roshim etzel avos. What does one have to do with the other? Says Rashi, Havile will michtav Rashi matais b'nei Yisrael. So Eloi mocha ma avos, just like fathers manchilin b'neihem, their children inherit kol mashi yirtza. Saf Rashi manchilin esam kol mashi yirtzu. So to the leaders, they also are able to be manchil kol mashi yirtzu. So basically, what does that mean? The point is that there's a concept of hefker best and hefker. They have the ability to take monies away. They have the authority and authorization to do so. But it's not a raya when it comes to dinim of isurim, or fine, by Yerusha they could do it, the Chachamim can institute this. However, when it comes to the dinim of Isser, of let's say making something which is truma, which is midiraisa to truma, but to say it's not a truma, that's not something in which maybe the Chachamim have the authorization to do. Question 10. Madua ein raya shebeistin mastin la'akar dobim v'natayra masha bal yorish ishto katana. So this is only part of question 10. Masha bal yorish enu ikira to b'momen hefker beistin hefker. Weiter. Umatamala. So we say that this husband has a right to become tameh, even though he's a kohen, to this woman, his wife that died. Again, midaraisa, it's the father that's matama, because really again, she doesn't have a father, but the reality is it's not a kedushin. It's not a kedushin deraisa. There's a midarabana matama labal. So why do we say that it works? Because unbelievable shot. Because this situation, she's mamish considered to be like a mace mitzvah. What does that mean? Says question 10. B'kivan de'ein la yorshim el bal havile mace mitzvah lefikach matamula. Tremendous. Even though you're right, technically the husband should not be able to become tameh with her because she's a katana. Nonetheless, we will consider it that we will allow her to do so and become impure, because it's like a meis mitzvah, because there's no one else to be able to do the burial, because the father is not in the picture. So if the father's not in the picture, and he's the one who had the financial wherewithal to be able to engage in such activities, so with the absence of the father, we say that the husband can become tameh. It doesn't just mean coming tameh. It means that he is probably going to be oisik in the kvur and everything, and all the finances. This is also TA 12. Tanya miyamasei adam yarshas ishto katana heich metamula v'hari rakman rabbanan he ishto. Fine. So that's what we said. All right. Let's see if it says it a little bit different. Question 12. Kivan de mishpachas avia lo yarti la. Interesting, because the family, the father won't inherit. So because of that, ve'enu boyin havili kemes mitzvah. Interesting. So the Yerusha is connected to the Tumah. The way he explains it is that the notion that they will not have the money as an inherit from her, because it goes to the husband, so too he should do the kavura. Okay. Umi havi meis mitzvah. What do you mean? It's not a meis mitzvah. Bosanya eza meis mitzvah koshen lo kovrin. There's no one to do the burial. Koirei. If you call v'acherim oinenoso and others answer, ein ze meis mitzvah. This is not a meis mitzvah. So when it says hachanami kivan delo yarti lo. So this is what I didn't see it yet, because she doesn't. Her father's heirs don't inherit. Kari v'lo anula. It's considered like there's no one that will answer. There's no one that will respond. V'chelas begino truma. So how do we understand this? That she's able, that she eats in the garden truma, if in fact the kedushin is not deraisa. Her answer is betruma durabanan. Adkan.